What I wanted to do today is recapitulation, first of all, of an important subject that we have started to speak about when we just opened the circle, which is how can we influence the course of history with spiritual work, with light work. And so we were speaking about three poles of action, like three main important poles. And we were speaking about the importance of acknowledging, in order to change the dynamic of light and darkness in the world, was, first of all, one of the first conditions was to acknowledge the power of the light, that the light has the power to transmute any darkness. The second condition was that we have to hold the intention to hold this light within our hearts in order to activate the light. And the third pole was that we actually need to work on clearing and purifying our light vessel in order to contain as much light as possible. Okay? But in order to give permission to the divine light to transmute, we need to use our free will in order to be able to give the permission to this light to do its job, because the light is free and roaming all around, but it needs to receive, to be activated, to be by people who are holding free will, which is us. And in order to start its job, it needs to be held, contained in a space, and this container need to be a proper container. So we were speaking about the different way to clarify and purify this container and to expand it. Now, during the last journeys that I shared with you, we were speaking really about how we can actually activate this light, and we were speaking about the two different subjects, which is the power of surrendering and the power of gratitude. Those are the two keys that can activate this light. And this is the reason why Amber has been invited, is to share about how to actually do that when you don't know how to surrender, and when you have so much worrying and so much things that it's, when you're going through difficult challenges, it's actually difficult to hold gratitude, And so this is why she's going to come later on to speak about her own experience, how it was to feel this experience of surrendering through this journey. Amber, everybody was waiting for you. Welcome, and thank you for waking up so early. The previous journey that we have done about acknowledging the power of the light, and that this was what was allowing actually a drastic change of balance in the world. It's by recognizing the power of this light that can transmute any darkness, and just by acknowledging and holding the intention to host this light within us, what we saw in the journey was that it was allowing a drastic shift in the world. And so we saw that the two keys to do that was, first of all, to surrender. That was like the gratitude for this power, and to surrender to this power. And so I had some question with the people that I shared that with, and they said, okay, but how do you surrender when you have no idea how to surrender? So I said, okay, maybe let's ask Amber, how was that surrendering experience for her? So if you'd like to share about this or about anything else, you're welcome.
The one thing that I want to bring up when it comes to surrender is that when you look at even science and particles in the field of physics, that photons, which are what create the light of the earth, is one of the particles that has no mass. So the light of the earth is created from something that has no mass at all, where all the other particles have mass. And some of those particles come together to create their own field. Everything else in the world functions from an electron field, but the things that can create light can come together and create their own field. And that's on a particle level of science. And so to surrender, one of the ways that I have learned over time is one of the things I always do is I basically call back my eyes. And I know that sounds funny, but when you lay down on the ground or on a bed or wherever, and for me, I look at, okay, where are my eyes kind of going? And I can see some of the energy in my body goes way out of my body. So I invite it back in, but I always start with the eyes. And to give, I find that to give something room to kind of come back to you, to have your cells kind of come back and drop back to you is you cannot contract. And it's about being so open. Energy is pre-thought. Intuition is pre-thought. As soon as we get into thought, we contract. And so there is zero state of surrender in that moment. You slip into the mind and everything gets lost. But the idea is that the practice that I've always done is I almost imagine the weight of my being, and I always start with my eyes, but it's like a rock dropping through water, through a stream all the way till it hits a riverbed. I invite as much of my physical weight to surrender onto whatever surface I'm on as possible. And I start with the eyes, and the other place I go to is the pelvis and the sacrum, the sacred bone, because that is by so many different cultures known as a very, it is a monumental part of the body. And when that is surrendered, it resets the entire nervous system out of a sympathetic into parasympathetic. So it brings the body out of fight or flight, and it balances the hemispheres of the brain, and then the third eye opens.
So for you, it's like surrendering, asking your body to surrender, and then your mind surrenders.
I ask the body because what I find is, like a lot of practices just stay in the mind, like therapy just stays in the mind. A lot of, but the reality is every single cell in your body has DNA that holds a memory of one part is physical, one part is mental, one part is emotional, and it's all spiritual. And so you can go through different aspects to get that surrendered state. But if my mind is holding and I can't get out of it, then I go, okay, the sacrum. And then I go through, I'll go through my L5, the lowest vertebra, and I practice bringing each one into a complete state of surrender. And what I find is actually in your bone marrow itself is where all new DNA is created, and it's where an incredible amount of consciousness in the body lives. So when you're focusing on the bone, even if you were physically working on the bone, when you start contacting bone tissue, it actually also pulls you out of fight or flight. It is something that as soon as you contact the bone marrow, that's what it does. And it's not, there's nothing woo-woo about it. It's very scientific. And so it's also when you go into the state of surrender and really working on the bones, it actually is the quickest way to kind of heal patterns and change consciousness, because it is where all your new DNA is being created. Really stuck in the brain, I go into, because you do have a flow in the bones because of the bone marrow. So I go into that, I call back my eyes to try to balance my brain. Sorry, my dog is talking in the background. And then I go through each single vertebra, and it will actually balance not just the hemispheres of the brain, but both sides of the body. And if you even still get stuck, I'll use my hand to breathe into each vertebra, because the breath also, you can't go into your mind if you're breathing.
Mm-hmm. And so, so you're able to do that when you meditate and when we're journeying. Have you been, since you have experienced that state of total surrendering that you experience through the journey, have you been able to bring that into your life, like in practical life, like in your daily life, not just like during meditation?
So, two things. The practice of Actually, the practice of dropping the bones themselves. When I am vertical walking around, the reason why I like that practice is because I'll try to think about my bones again and stacking them and bringing a ball of light between every single vertebra, like it has a gill to breathe. And that actually, from my experience, that is the physiological training of ascension, because you're allowing light to lift you, and it is a feeling of grace rather than any muscle, any efforting. And from that place, I find that I am much more guided moving around through the earth or through the world. The second thing is, once I've hit the state of surrender and in the journey, as you know, it's not like all experiences go straight to the mystical for me, but a lot of the experiences, some of them have been monumentally dark in the beginning while I'm looking at things that, blown apart everything I know because of how atrocious some of it has been. And then on the other side, when this outrageous mystical experience of divinity comes in, once that energy comes in, it is something that what I do is just in my waking hours, I revisit it. And for example, around the eclipse, one of the energies I had felt, I had felt my insides kind of opening up with all this different light that is from a different dimension than I've seen before. And it was going in and running in, and I still tune into that. And when I am feeling my cells light up at a different frequency that I've ever felt. And I'm feeling, again, a huge feeling of weightlessness, much more grace, much more ease. And I'm feeling a connection running out through my crown that I haven't felt before. And so what I find is that, once an energy comes in, that it is important to continue to work with that energy for as long as you can. And even if it's visiting it for one moment, it pulls it into consciousness more and more. It's like watering your garden. And every time you go, I find it not only gets bigger, but I find that my brain changes the more I visit that, or an area of pain, or whatever it is.
Absolutely. Because actually we are a light vessel by essence. And because we forget that, because most of the time we're in a state of contraction. So we prevent the light to come through. And so we don't even know that this is possible, because when the light comes through, it repairs everything on its way. It activates, and the vibration, the high vibration that we're supposed to hold to participate to the energetic balance of the earth is actually done automatically when we are in a state of surrendering, because then the light can come through and do its job. So the only thing we have to do really is to let go of the contraction and allow the light to come in. And so really, it's really about clearing the vessel and allow. This is what surrendering means, really. It's giving permission.
And it's funny because even on a, really technical level, if you look at an injury, all your muscles around it, everything is protecting it and defending it, because that's their aim. That's what they're supposed to do. It's what the brain tells them to do. But as soon as there is a sense of peace for that area to just let go, the healing comes in. But the irony is that and that's the difference between us and the animals, where they're able to heal much quicker. And a lot of, indigenous tribes, especially the Aborigines, their healing was so quick because they would just go right into it with sound, and there wasn't this contraction of the brain and thinking it out. Because the reality is, when you really go into the brain and you really even go into the pattern of an injury, you can't unwind it through thought. It doesn't work that way. It has to be a bowing. And in my eyes, it's bowing to the miracle of the divine of every single cell that is in every single one of us. And when I first started with certain things, I'd be like, I'd look at parts of my body and it would trigger, this injury and I'm so upset, or, this experience is that I was identifying my body as. And the only way I could really get through that was, wait a minute, I am part of all that, I have miracles, I have cells inside me. That means there's a miracle that exists. And surrendering and honoring to that, it's like, if we cannot honor that, and as you and I have seen so many times in our journeys, that, if there is not this very humble asking for help from the angels, from divinity, from wherever, it cannot come in.
Absolutely. And so that's an important point that you bring up, is that sometimes when we feel stuck, either because we are stuck in our emotional body or our mental body, because we have still a lot of things to resolve. And of course, when we are stuck there, our light vessel is not the most fluid, doesn't allow the most fluid circulation of energy. At this moment, it's very important to remember that we can just ask for assistance, for divine assistance, and say, hey, God, please allow me. My intention is to invite the divine presence on earth and to hold as much light in my heart as possible in order to activate that light and participate to the transmutation work that I'm supposed to do. But please bring me some help, send me help in order to clear my light vessel as much as possible, so I would be a proper light holder. Because of this the paradigm of duality in which we live in, even if the assistance is available, we have to initiate it by asking it. State of surrendering is the state where you say, hey God, I now surrender to your assistance. And just to state this intention is like opening the way to actually so much, but it requires some level of courage.
It does, but the reality too is, this is the reason I brought up the particles, is because that's our natural state. Even so, when you look at the skeleton, if you look at a skeleton, the sternum that goes downwards, and the ribs, actually the front of the ribs, the sternum, they all point downwards. The bowl of the pelvis points downwards. The flow of the leg goes downwards. Everything is bowing to the earth in a state of surrender. All of the energy of the front of the body, whereas the energy of the back of the body, the ribs, everything that reaches up, even the occiput, and right above, the brain stem, the very top of the spinal cord where it meets the skull, that's called the gates of heaven. Because when this is lifted up, you can receive so much information, and third eye is more accessible. And that whole part goes up to the heavens. And the sacrum is the meeting of heaven and earth. And that's where, if that is set, the embodiment of heaven on earth can exist. And so if we're literally meant to physically bow, and the reason I say, you call home your eyes, you call home the energy of your eyes, because when I sit here right now, I say, wow, one of my eyes is going way far out this way and the energy is going that way. And I just gently invite them back, and they come with an invitation, not force. But the other part is that the eyes, it's a funny practice, but if you actually visualize and practice exhaling through the eyes, it's like water pouring down the front of the body and bringing an amount of calm and openness. It's really incredible. There are just small little keys, and I always bring up the body because I find it shifts the system the easiest. It's the most efficient way to receive.
Because this is where we are trapped, really.
Exactly.
What we get,
the knowledge is in the bones. There is so much wisdom, and there is so much to remember. And I
information,
because the universe is inside the being. So the deeper you sink in, which has to go through the bones, the more it becomes accessible, and the more communication to other sources is available.
I have a question for Amber.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you elaborate about the calling back the energy of the eyes? Like, what do you mean?
So I find when you first practice, it's best to do it lying down, because that's where you're literally in the greatest state of surrender, right? Physically. So the whole thing with calling back the eyes is it's basically an invitation to let the eyes let go, because the eyes represent their if you think about what the eyes are doing, they interpret everything upside down and backwards. That's how the eyes work. And so that's why there's so much confusion with the world and how people see, and the way you see versus what's happening energetically. And so, but when the eyes are in a state of peace and they have symmetry, that's what allows the third eye to come in. So one of the things that I like to do is I try to picture the socket of the eye widening so that it has space, because the reality is if you think about the energy of the body, if you were to run a race, you're sending your energy much further past the finish line, right? You're not only sending your energy to the actual finish line. So similarly, we all have a field around us. We're much, much bigger than the end of the fingertip. So your field is huge. So when you are calling back your eyes, our kind of very human mind will be like, oh, well, my eye's only this big. So when you lay down and you go and you kind of just feel where your eyes are, and you feel, okay, where are my eyes seeing? And typically they're seeing very far outside of your body. And that's, to me, one of the first moments that I get to see, whoa, I am so much bigger than this actual form. The energy of my body is, my right eye actually looks like it's like 10 feet wide over here. I know this might sound a little funny, but that it's starting to learn how to see energy. And it's starting to see, okay, well, the energy of my body is going this far back. So what I'm going to do by inviting my eyes home is that I'm softening. And what I'm doing is I'm basically bowing to the fact that I can't control this. I can only invite it. And I'm going to give as much space in my being. If my being needs me to go so much bigger and wider than I actually think I am, then I must do so. So I keep softening and softening and softening to allow, again, like a rock through water, my eye to finally drop back into my body. Does that make sense to you? Or not quite?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so it's really, it's like even things of like imagining the bridge of your nose widening, but it's getting bigger and bigger to basically receive yourself. And the beauty of this moment of the invitation is that when you receive yourself, you receive the light. So much of the training of the brain and of the world is that we're not light. And the reality is there's nothing broken. There's nothing to fix. We just need to call ourselves back, because most of the time we're feeling things that are not self. And we have to be so much bigger. And the other part that's so wild is that the experience of when parts of your body just even drop back into a calm state, that alone defies interference from other things. And it's a really beautiful and wild experience to realize how much more magic we hold. Like even Shalva's little meditation that we just did, it's ironic because we're so used to, as soon as we feel a lot of light, we're like, oh, I'm out of here. I got to go do this, and we go into the brain. And there's this funny thing of how much more trained we are to feel other rather than the light and ourselves and the truth of our own beings, which are really immaculate. And so that training of just literally, okay, calling this back and allowing to feel exactly what it is, and that it's actually light, not something else, is very baffling for the brain. And that it's even bigger and greater and more beautiful than anything in our imagination could have expected.
Yeah, because the eyes is the portals that take you out of yourself. And so it's like you're re-entering the portal in.
Yeah.
Really. It's like you've been out and now you're invited to come in again.
And any trauma like any trauma and anything, the world is constantly like, get this, look out here. The world teaches you to go outside of yourself all the time. But again, even on a level of the atom, an atomic level of the cells, is that we can create our own field of light. We don't have to participate with whatever else is happening out there. And so, the less it's like, sometimes I'll be like calling back, I'll say, whoa, my whole body is, this much far ahead of me because of, I've gotten so far ahead, so nervous, so whatever from trauma, from experiences, and just calling it all home alone, that alone becomes a mystical experience because you get to see that you are all the ways that we identify as our beings are absolutely not true, and that you get the experience of, oh my God, that's not true. It's actually all light. When all of it comes back, you get to see, holy shit, we're really all this incredible vessel of light, and all those other things I thought I was, they're just energies. They're not the identity.
Yeah, I have a question to Amber. I'm very touched when you say when you receive yourself, you receive the light, and to call my body home or to call my home back. But when you decide, to hold that light and to hold also that promise to yourself and to the universe, did this change your whole relationship to your body? Meaning that you train your body, you dance more, maybe you swim, maybe you run, like a certain amount of hours.
She does all of this.
What? No, but
She does all of it.
Okay, but maybe she did it before, maybe it changed, it shift, because we depend on this vessel, on this home, which is our body.
What I find is that, say a certain area, you're working with a certain area and you feel filled with light. I find that I will acknowledge that area and see what it wants. And I know this sounds funny, but some of the times when I've been training certain areas of my body, I'll have this like intuition, like, go here, go whatever. And I'm like, what? But I just do it. And then I'll meet somebody and all these other things line up that blow my mind. And so it's almost like the more you're listening to, like, if there's any kind of inclination, if it does say go dance and go whatever, and I have times where, and that's part of the surrendering, is nurturing these cells and whatever they need, because the reality is you have not yet met that divine part of yourself. And so I find the more I listen and nurture to its requests that I'm, subtly sounding out, because you have to remember it speaks through a very pre-thought kind of place, very a feeling kind of place, that the more I'm listening to that and nurturing it, the more it lasts, the more it stays, and it actually starts to fortify. And it's not something where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to pull this in and visit. It just stays and it continues to build. And more of, I find my brain changes. All of these things change the more light I pull into my cells, and more just that I'm freeing more and more of my cells. So
Yes,
if your body says go dance and it says, I want an hour of dancing, and you're in your head and you're like, man, I got 20 minutes. I am tired. You push it, whatever that request is, because it will bring you, it's almost like this breadcrumb of greater and greater and greater light. It's like your path.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing this, because I know it's the fact that you're able to explain it in those terms, it's like it's concrete. And so I feel it can be very helpful for many people who are asking themselves all those questions. And one thing I feel called to say also is that one of the reasons why we are feeling this state of contraction really, and we are so afraid to surrender, is also because we are sensing this sense of separation, and we have seen that the past few weeks with many different people, is that this wound of separation is making us, is confusing us and bring us into a panic mode. And so because we are so afraid of that separation from the source, we start to actually we contract because of this fear. This fear brings us to a state of contraction. And so it prevents us to experience finding the divine through the space that the divine is giving us to actually be. And so, and that's very, that's an art to be able to find that, to find the divine within the space that the divine give us to be. And the divine has to hide somehow to give us that space. And so if we are able to actually, surrender to this space, that we actually can find it just if we stop fighting inside, we stop this inner fight, and we stop this panic that we are separated, and we are able to actually just calm down. We are able to see that actually we were never separated and it was always an illusion. And even though it feels like we are separated, we are not really separated. And I believe that a lot of the ability to surrender is also coming from this realization, is that there is no real separation, and we can just relax and find the divine in a different way out of the panic state, out of the flight and fight state.
But I think going into it too, knowing that, because right now we're expanding on a level that is so humongous, that has never ever happened to this degree. We are expanding so so quickly right now, and the entire field is expanding really quickly. So of course that's going to mean that there is a greater moment of unknown and more of a wanting to pull back, to contract. And so, yes, like you're saying, part of that bravery, because that's what we're going to go through as we continue to expand. And part of kind of holding that awareness, like you're saying, of, there is no separation. There has kind of, you always got to kind of hold this thing of, no matter what, there is honor in this walk. And this is it is the highest honor to be able to heal and to be able to bring in more light into this realm, period. And so knowing that no matter whatever it is that each person needs to kind of go through, knowing, okay, wait a minute, this is just an expansion. I'm only contracting really hard because I'm expanding. And there's gonna be more of that, guaranteed.
Yes, and for everybody it might take a different form, because everybody goes through different personal experience, but it's guaranteed that everybody will go through something challenging that will challenge each one of us to go through this expansion. And we have the choice either to contract more through this challenge, or to decide to surrender to the challenge and to invite this state of expansion in order to meet the divine through the experience and through the challenge. And then it's just what allows us to cross the bridge and go to the other side.